we have discussed about anatomical classification, anatomical division of cerebellum, functional as well as the phylogenetic. Now, the histological part. Like histologically, cerebellum, again, it consists of three parts. Histological. So we will discuss histological first, histological, and then in detail about those layers, that is called as cytoarchitecture. So if there is any question regarding the histological division or histology of cerebellum or cytoarchitecture of cerebellum, it is one and same thing. So histologically, it is divided into three parts. Again, three parts. Outermost is cerebellar cortex. Okay, outermost is cerebellar cortex. Then there is medial one, that is medulla. Okay, cortex and medulla. Medulla is mainly made up of white matter. So white matter, medulla. Okay, white matter, medulla. And within the white matter, there are scattered few nuclei of the gray matter, because the nuclei, they are made up of gray matter. So those embedded gray matter within the white matter, that forms deep cerebellar nuclei. Deep cerebellar nuclei. Now the cerebellar cortex, if we compare, see, if we compare the histology of the cerebellum with the histology of the spinal cord that we have covered, what is the major difference? It's totally opposite. Within spinal cord, the gray column was the medial most, right? Like say, if this was the spinal cord, that alphabet H shape, right? This is the gray matter in the spinal cord, and outer one was the white matter. But in cerebellar cortex, it's exactly opposite. The inner one is the white matter and outer one is the cortex. So within the cerebellar cortex, it is further divided. If we say the cerebellar cortex, first of all, it's folded, extensively folded, and those extensive fold present in the cerebellar cortex, it gives its kind of a shape of leaves, like leaf, folia. That's why it is these extensive folding, they are called as folia. Okay, now this cerebellar cortex, if we further subdivide it, there are the three layers within the cerebellar cortex. The outermost is called as molecular cell layer. Okay, molecular cell layer, that is the most superficial or the outermost. Then there comes the second one, that is Purkinje cell layer. See, Purkinje, you have heard about the Purkinje fiber within the heart. Purkinje are over here too in the cerebellum. Okay, then you will hear about the Purkinje in region 2 in ophthalm, eye part, special senses. There is a Purkinje effect. So the third one is, the innermost is granule cell layer. Granule cell layer. So one by one we will cover the molecular cell layer, the most superficial one. It has two types of cell, and those cells are named as basket and stellate. Basket cell and stellate cell. Stellate cell. So in the molecular layer there is stellate cell. Stellate means star shape. There is, like say, these star shape cells are there. Then there is basket cell. Why they have been given name as the basket? Because see, this is the outermost layer. So if I try to draw the diagram, say this is the outer part. From outward to inward we are going this way. There is these stellate cells and these basket cells. Now this basket cell, what is the second layer? Second layer is the Purkinje one. Within the Purkinje cell layer, the Purkinje cells are there. Now this basket cell, it forms synapse with the Purkinje cell, and that synapse is in the shape of a basket. Okay, that's why it is called as basket. So we can say, easy to remember is basket is giving like this shape, right? So the chand tare, desi version of remembering the thing. These basket and steelhead, chand tare, they are present on the outermost, the molecular layer. Apart from the cells, what else is present within the molecular layer? The molecular layer also has parallel fibers. What are these parallel fibers and why they are called so? Because see, if this is the outermost part of the cerebral cortex, the granule cell, that is the innermost layer, they are sending extensive branches of their dendrites. Okay, these axons are there, these fibers, dendritic branches, sorry. And these branches are traveling parallel to the surface of the cerebellum. That's why they are called as parallel fibers. And they are present in the most superficial mode. So the outermost layer, that molecular layer, it has basket steelhead cell as well as the parallel fibers. The second layer was Purkinje cell layer. As the name itself suggests, Purkinje cell layer, it has Purkinje cells. Purkinje cells. And if you can recall back, Purkinje, you have heard this name in CVS. Purkinje cells are present within the cerebellum. Then you will also hear about the Purkinje within the eye, vision. There is one term that's called as Purkinje effect. Okay, that's a part. Purkinje cell layer. Purkinje is the most important person in the cerebellum, we can say. Like if we consider cerebellum as a family, Purkinje is the chief of the family. If the rest of the nervous system wants to take any opinion from the cerebellum, they will send all the signals, all the incoming fibers will ultimately end up on the Purkinje cell, whether they are coming from the cortex, brainstem or the spinal cord. Okay, as well as the other cells of the cerebellum, whatever the cells, granule, Golgi, basket or steelhead, they will also end up on the Purkinje cell. And Purkinje cell will send the output, the ultimate, the final decision taker of the family is the Purkinje cell. So output from the cerebellum is only via the Purkinje cell. The rest of the cells, they will give their opinion to the Purkinje cell, and Purkinje cell is the one which gives the output fiber from the cerebellum. So only output from the cerebellum is Purkinje. It is present in the middle layer of the cerebellar cortex. Okay, middle layer of the cerebellar cortex. The third one was the granule cell layer. Within the granule cell layer, the granule, as the name itself suggests, granule cells are there. Then there are two other cells, granule cell, and the name itself suggests granule is very small granule, and it sends extensive fibers. Like those fibers, they are parallel fiber, extensive branches of these fibers. So it is sending fibers not only in the innermost granule cell layer, within the molecular cell layer, the intermediate, the Purkinje cell layer, as well as the molecular cell layer. Now, two G are more over here. One is Golgi cell, Golgi cells. These cells, they are larger as compared to the granule cell. They are larger cells. And then there is third is glomerulus. Glomerulus is formation of this glomerulus around these Golgi and granule cell. These are not the cells. So there are two types of the cell within the granule cell layer, granule and Golgi cell. Okay. Now these three layers, we can say it has got five cells, five types of the cell. Steelhead, basket, molecular cell layer. Purkinje cell layer, second layer. The third one, granule cell layer, innermost one, granule cell as well as the Golgi cells. Okay. Now the second layer is white matter or cortex, and then there is medulla, white matter of the cerebellum. So if you compare it from spinal cord, what is the significant difference? Within the spinal cord, it was totally opposite. Gray matter was forming the core and outer part was the white matter. But within cerebellum, white matter is present inside medullary and outermost part is gray matter. Now this white matter or medulla of this cerebellar cortex, These white matter, they are fibers, either the incoming or the outgoing fiber within the cerebellum, right? Outgoing or incoming fibers, or the fibers, the tracks which communicate within the cerebellum itself, okay, within the cerebellum. So these fibers, like in the previous video we have talked about superior cerebellar peduncle, middle cerebellar peduncle, and inferior cerebellar peduncle. So these tracks, mainly the incoming from the spinal cord or the brain stem, these incoming fibers, they are entering via the inferior cerebellar peduncle, and superior cerebellar peduncle mainly outgoing to the cortex, cerebral cortex, and middle it was mixture. Just imagine, like the middle one, it goes, the outgoing one goes for the brain stem one. So these fibers, whether they are incoming or the outgoing, these fibers, they are called as projection fibers. Projection fiber. And projection fiber, whether they are the afferent one or the efferent one, incoming or outgoing, their ultimate destination is Purkinje cell. Okay. Now the second fiber is association fibers. They associate one part of the cerebellar hemisphere to the second part of the cerebellar hemisphere. Like within a particular cerebellar hemisphere, so the worm is, this part want to communicate with this part, then these fibers will travel. This part want to communicate with this one, these fibers, they are the association fiber. Now what happens if one cerebellar hemisphere wants to communicate with the other one? They will also communicate, and those fibers are called as commissure fibers. Okay, so all these projection, association, or the commissure fiber, these three types, they are present within the white medulla. Now within the white medulla, apart from these fibers, what else is present? There are few embedded gray matters, like say this is the white matter, few embedded gray matter are there. Those embedded gray matter, they are called as nuclei, deep cerebellar nuclei. That is the third part, deep cerebellar nuclei. And these deep cerebellar nuclei, they have been named as DEFG. D for dentate nucleus, E for emboliform, F for Purkinje, and G for globose. Okay. Now this dentate nuclei, they are present within the medulla. Okay. This is lateral most, like say this cerebellar hemisphere is there, one cerebellar hemisphere, outermost is the cortex, then within the medulla, the lateral most part is the dentate nucleus, and the medial most part is nuclei are Purkinje. In between there is emboliform and globose. These emboliform and globose, sometimes collectively they are also called as interpositus. Interpositus nuclei, collectively emboliform and globose. Now the significance of these nuclei is Purkinje cell is the only cell within the cerebellum which gives the output. So it gives its output to these deep cerebellar nuclei. We can say deep cerebellar nuclei is kind of a communicator between the rest of the nervous system and cerebellum. So Purkinje cell will send its fiber to these nuclei, plus Purkinje cell also sends one more output that will bypass these nuclei, that is to the vestibular nuclei for maintaining the balance. Okay, so that's regarding the histology part. Within the cerebellum, like Purkinje cell is the chief, and it receives all the sensory input. Now these sensory input, they have been broadly divided into two parts, like the fibers which carries the afferent, like the incoming information to the cerebellum, means that is ultimately supposed to go to Purkinje cell via climbing fibers, climbing fiber, and the second one is mossy fibers. Now these climbing fibers, they mainly arise from inferior olivary nucleus that is present within the medulla. Okay, within the medulla, and these axons of these fibers, they will directly one-to-one communicate with the Purkinje cell. Like say the Purkinje cell is there, this climbing fiber will directly go and talk with the Purkinje cell. And the most significant feature of these, whether the climbing or the mossy fiber, they are excitatory. Means the neurotransmitter released from these neuron axons of these both the tracks will be glutamate, excitatory. So the climbing fiber will directly talk one-to-one with the Purkinje cell. Climbing one. Now coming to the mossy fiber. Why it is called as mossy? Because it resembles the plant moss. Okay, and difference from the climbing fiber is it communicates with Purkinje cell not directly but via indirect. Mossy fiber will send its branches to granule cell. Okay, it will also send it to the Golgi cell, but mostly to the granule cell, and it is excitatory. Where from it is coming? Climbing fiber was coming from the inferior olivary nucleus. Rest of the nervous system, all those fibers, whether it is coming from the spine, the spinocerebellar tract, if it is coming from cortex, cerebral cortex, then from the cortex it will go to the pons, then cortico-pontocerebellar tract. Okay, cortico-pontocerebellar tract. If it is coming from reticular formation, then it is called as reticulocerebellar tract. Okay, reticulocerebellar tract. If it is coming from red nucleus, it is called as rubrocerebellar tract. So rest of all the afferent fiber, apart from the inferior olivary one, these fiber, they form the mossy fibers. Okay, and they communicate with the granule cell, not one-to-one. Like in the case of the climbing, one climbing fiber will stimulate one Purkinje cell. But what is the significance of the mossy? It will give the branches or synapses to the granule cell. Okay, many a granule cell, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it will give branch over here. There are the Golgi cells too. So this kind of form the glomerulus. That's why, if you can recall back, the innermost layer of the cerebral cortex also had the glomerulus. That's formed by these incoming fiber, mossy fiber. Now, the granule cell, one mossy fiber is forming connection with many granule cell. And now what the granule cell was doing? Granule cell was sending branches extensively through the parallel fibers. Like if we consider one granule cell, it has got multiple branches of the fiber, and ultimately it will send the signal to multiple Purkinje cells. These are the Purkinje cells. So we can say one mossy fiber will ultimately end up in communicating with almost 400 to 500 Purkinje cells. Right? 400 to 500 Purkinje cells. And the peculiar salient feature about this climbing fiber are both of them are excitatory, irrespective of whether they are ending on the Purkinje or whatever, that is excitatory. Now out of those 5 cells, Purkinje cell, stellate cell, basket cell, granule cell and Golgi cell, what kind of the neurotransmitter they release? Apart from the granule, which releases glutamate, this is excitatory. Rest all these 4, they are inhibitory, they release inhibitory neurotransmitter GABA. Okay, they release inhibitory neurotransmitter. This is how we can say the histological classification of the cerebellar cortex. The outer was molecular, which has stellate and basket cell. Then the second layer was Purkinje cell layer. This outer one, this is the molecular, and this middle, this reddish one, reddish pinkish one, this is the Purkinje, and innermost blue one, this is the granular cell layer which has granule cell and Golgi cell. Okay. So, Purkinje cell inhibitory, all of the cells are inhibitory except the granule cell which releases excitatory neurotransmitter glutamate, and only output from the cerebellar cortex is Purkinje cell. Now, within the cortex, afferent fibers were there, mossy and climbing fibers, right, and efferent is from the Purkinje.